Happy 2018, everybody, from the other side, and welcome to episode 18. I'm Mr. Margison, and I'm going to be flying solo today. Mr. Spears, we lost Mr. Spears for a little bit. He retired from the Other Side podcast to give sports gambling advice. And if you follow him on Twitter, you probably know what I'm talking about. That was really short-lived. I think he's back now. But I'm going to be going solo today, and this is primarily an economics episode, so I think that's appropriate. 2017, first of all, 2017 was a great year for our podcast, for the other side. We started kicking around the idea early in the year when we got back from winter break last year, and we ended up launching, I think, our first episode around spring break time, and we got almost 20 episodes in, and we tinkered with some different formats. One that I'm using right now, Spreaker, is actually great. It's got, as far as control panel and sound quality and stuff, it's really good. But one of the problems with this format is we can't do joint episodes. So we tried doing one where Spears and I were together in the same room, working off the same microphone, and it just didn't work. The sound quality was terrible. So we switched to YouTube Live. That's where the vast majority of our recent podcasts have been. And you can check any of those out on our YouTube station, the Other Side podcast. They're all cataloged there. Justin went ahead and did all of that yesterday, so you can see everything that we did in 2008 and 17. In 2018, we are going to try and take this a step further. We're going to, I guess, semi-professionalize some of the components of the podcast. We're going to add a introduction, some graphics, a logo, Facebook page, and all in the hopes of, none of this, first of all, is monetary. This is not an entrepreneurial venture. This is just in the hopes of reaching more people, new people and more people, because for the same reason that we even started the podcast, there are so many people out there who, there is an entire side to social studies, to government, economics, and history that people just don't know, they had never heard before. Heck, I'm a social studies teacher, and I went through all of high school and college, and there was this entire other world of social studies and history and economics that I had never even heard before. And God, that's embarrassing, going into a teaching profession and then realizing there's this entire world out there that I didn't know. So we want to provide that for as many people as possible, and that's going to be our main goal in 2018. All right, so enough introduction. What are we talking about today? Like I said, this is going to be an economics episode, but it is also related to a tweet that Donald Trump sent out last week that, believe it or not, had anti-Trumpers in full meltdown mode. I mean, this was like an apocalyptic meltdown from the left when he sent out this tweet. And I'm going to read the tweet for you really quickly, and then I'll get into what we're talking about. This was December 28th, 2017. Trump tweeted, "In the East, it could be the coldest," he put that in all caps, "New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars," put that in all caps, "to protect against. Bundle up!" exclamation point. And that was the tweet. And this particular tweet I follow Trump on Twitter, and one of the things that I enjoy doing is looking at the comments after he tweets something, because the left just becomes apoplectic when he tweets anything. But when he tweets something related to global warming, this was gold. And the response was absolutely predictable. I could have predicted it before even reading them. It's going to be, Trump doesn't believe in science. Trump thinks that there's no global warming. Trump thinks that weather is the same as climate. Trump is a bumbling buffoon moron who doesn't get anything, and he just exposed that with this tweet that he sent out. And that's essentially what we got. I'm going to read some of the responses here. These are from Congress people, like actual Congress people, and you can see that it pretty much follows. It's so predictable. Elizabeth Warren tweeted about an hour after he sent that out, "I'm going to say something really crazy. I believe in science." Good for you. "Climate change is real, and we have a moral obligation to protect this earth for our children and grandchildren." I believe in science. All right, let me go back and read the tweet. In the East, it could be the coldest New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars, all caps, to protect against. Bundle up. Nothing in here that says science is not real. Nothing in here that says he doesn't believe in science. Nothing in that says global warming's not real. But the way it's interpreted here by Elizabeth Warren says something else. All right, here are a couple of other tweets from, Sheldon Whitehouse. He is a senator from, I want to say in the Northeast somewhere, Rhode Island possibly. I could have that wrong. Sheldon Whitehouse, this comes at 9:45 p.m., so about 3 hours after Trump sent the tweet. This is just embarrassing. It's clear facts don't matter to you. Which facts don't matter to him? But here's the new climate change report from your administration that affirms climate change is caused by human activity and has serious health, economic, and environmental consequences. And then he adds a link there. Okay. I don't know which facts don't matter to Trump, but Kamala Harris, who is being touted as a possible presidential candidate she's going to be a sacrificial lamb if she is, but to counter Trump, climate change is real. Did he say that it wasn't? And it poses a grave threat to our nation and our planet. It's abundantly clear this administration won't tackle climate change head on, so state and local governments must. Okay? New York Representative Kathleen Rice. Instead of tweeting like a child who hates science class, again, this is so predictable. Trump hates science. I guess he hates science. Is it? Does anybody get this? In the East, it could be the coldest New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars, all caps, to protect against. Bundle up. He hates science? I'm just not getting that. All right, let me finish here. Instead of tweeting like a child who hates science class, this is Kathleen Rice, representative from New York, I believe. If you're so worried about the cold, you could always send your 45 million followers info about how to find shelter, prevent hypothermia and frostbite, prevent pipes from freezing, protect their pets, etc. What? Protect their pets? This is what he should be tweeting out? Here, this embodies what the left feels about the nanny state right here. That the president of the United States, when it's cold outside, should be explaining to them how to protect their pets. Yeah, normal people can't figure this out, Kathleen Rice. Look, I have a beagle who hates going outside even when it's warm. And when I woke up on Monday, it was negative 16. When I woke up yesterday, it was negative 17. And my beagle went outside under my supervision and went to the bathroom and came back in, and he's still alive. He's sleeping right here next to me. Yeah, I managed to do that without Trump explaining to me how to take care of my pets. I've not heard of this lady. Representative Pramila Jayapal. I may have mispronounced that. Okay, she is from state of Washington. In 2017, there were about 3 record high temperatures in the U.S. for every record low temperature. Weather is not the same as climate. The president should be able to understand that. It isn't hard. Gosh, he's just such an idiot. And then she links to a NASA page. What's the difference between weather and climate? Mark Pocan, denying Donald. Oh, he gave him a nickname. Doesn't understand science. Okay. His ignorance is our loss. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I can't believe she even shows her face anywhere. While Trump struggles to understand the difference between temperature and climate, we must take action in our own communities. We can't afford to wait. All right, I don't need to read any more of these. You get the point. Again, it's a very, very predictable response. Trump tweets something about global warming. Now, let's go back to something that our 5th grade teachers had us do. And everybody should probably remember this. When we were first learning out how to read and interpret a passage, one of the things that you would do is you would read something and your teacher would have you underline the main idea. All right, that's a pretty common exercise. So I'm going to read Donald Trump's tweet once more, and I want you to try and figure out what the main idea is. If the main idea to you is he hates science, I'm probably going to need somebody to explain how you arrived at that, but that's fine. But one more time, in the East, it could be the coldest, he put that in all caps, New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars, all caps, to protect against. Bundle up. What do you think the main idea of this tweet was? Nothing about science. This is my interpretation. Nothing about science. Nothing about hating science. Nothing about hating science class. Nothing about protecting your pets. But the fact that our country and not other countries was going to sacrifice trillions of dollars to protect against global warming. This is clearly a tweet at the economics behind the Paris Climate Agreement. In my opinion, I think that was obvious. First of all, I think it was obvious that he was being a little bit facetious here. We could use a little bit of that when he puts good old global warming. Clearly, he's taking a jab at environmentalists. According to the anti-Trump crowd, he's totally serious. He has just outed himself as not understanding science and thinking that when it's cold outside, there's no such thing as global warming. Well, this is what the left does now. This is one of the frustrating things. Look, in our last, if you listen to our last episode, one that Spears and I did together, we did the best and worst of 2017. And for me, the worst thing about 2017 was the fact that nobody really has a political dialogue anymore. Political dialogue has been reduced to just a toxic pile of waste. Actually, it's not even a toxic pile of waste. It's just non-existent. It doesn't happen anymore. Because what the left has done with everything that Donald Trump says and does is it's this process of reductionism. You reduce everything he says and everything he does and everything he tweets down to the stupidest, dumbest possible interpretation. And then it actually becomes really, really easy to refute. When you do that, you don't have to put a whole lot of thought into how you counter something like that. So Trump puts out his tweet, and if you say, "Wow, you hate science," that's what I gather from that tweet. I don't hate science. Nobody else should hate science. Science is real. Climate change is real. Your response is so simple if you take what Trump says and you reduce it down to the dumbest possible interpretation. And that's all anybody does, right? Trump tweets about whatever, Charlottesville. He said something that was absolutely true. What he said was there were good people on both the protesting side and the counter-protesting side, and there were troublemakers on both the protesting side and the counter-protesting side. That is 100% true. There is nothing false about that. And what is the interpretation, right? What is the reductionism? Trump's a white supremacist. He supports white supremacy. He supports neo-Nazis. These are the discussions that we're having. I mean, it's insufferable. You can't even have a normal policy discussion anymore with an anti-Trumper because they simply won't engage. They'll take it, they'll reduce it down to nothing, and then treat you like an idiot if you even wanted to discuss it. And the same thing is going on here. How about we discuss the economic implications of the Paris Climate Accord? Right? How about we do that? Look, no anti-Trumper is going to want to do that because that would require a little bit of work and a little bit of complex thought on their part. But if you want to try, again, in our last episode when Spears and I were talking about this and I was ranting and raving about the fact that no leftists want to have an actual policy discussion anymore, I said, here's just a test. Go up to a leftist or an anti-Trumper, and you have to do this in person because if you do it over email, we'll just bear with me for a second, but go up to an anti-Trumper and just say, you know what? I don't really understand this Russia collusion thing. Can you explain this to me? Can you connect the dots for me? I just don't get it. There will be nothing. It will be crickets. Absolute silence. Because leftists don't really understand the Trump-Russia collusion thing. They just like to repeat Russia and collusion, and it's the same thing with the Paris Accord, the climate accord from Paris in 2015. Ask them. Say, hey, listen, you know what? I don't really understand. Why is he against? Why did he pull us out of the Paris Climate Agreement? Can you explain that to me? Ask that of an anti-Trumper. Again, you have to do this in person, because if you do it over email or something, they'll take a couple of minutes to get back to you so that they can quickly go to the Huffington Post, go into the search bar, type in Paris Climate Agreement, Trump, and then get their talking points. So if you really want to stump them, just find somebody, and in casual conversation, if you can bring it up, if politics comes up, just play dumb. Hey, I don't really get this. Can you explain this to me? You will get nothing. Because most leftists don't know the economic implications of the Paris Climate Agreement. Well, number one, because it's not reported by the media. But number two, they are so entrenched in their hatred for Trump. If he's going to pull us out of it, let's reduce that to the dumbest possible scenario and just say that Trump hates science. So he's going to pull us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. That's as simple as that. And then we can argue it. We can say, no, science isn't something to hate. Science is good. So there's our position, and our position is morally superior to yours. It requires no complex thought. It requires nothing. Okay, so what I'm going to do to you, since this is the other side, I'm going to give you the other side of the Paris Climate Agreement. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background here on what the Paris Climate Accord was, why Trump pulled us out of it, and what he's referring to when he refers to the trillions of dollars that we were going to pay to stop climate change. Okay, so 2015, and I think it was summer of 2015, although I could have that wrong, but leaders from around the world met under the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris, and Barack Obama I don't know if he spearheaded this, but I think he was kind of the keynote here. But the whole point of the summit was about the use of CO2 emitting natural resources, coal, oil, natural gas, and these provide the vast majority of the world's energy needs, and we need to reduce them. In the United States, they provide about 90% of our energy needs. And so the whole point of this summit in 2015 was to reduce them. And this was non-binding, but it was just kind of a commitment that all these developed nations would do this. And so Barack Obama's part, right, his part, and this is very, very typical, was to, I guess he was the first one to speak, and he began the summit. It says here, began the summit by addressing the attendees. For all of the challenges we face, the growing threat of climate change could define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other. And so he went on to say that the Obama administration's aims were to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by the year 2025. So in 10 years, within the next decade, President Obama, now he is going to be long since out of office. So what he did here means absolutely nothing to him. He says the United States aim is to reduce CO2 emissions 26 to 28% in 10 years. Let's not even discuss whether or not that's plausible, because it's not. But you know what? We will leave that aside for a second. And there's other things that about this that I don't have time to get into. But you know what? Let's not even discuss the fact that what negligible effect that's even going to have on surface temperatures, right? If let's say that the United States was able to accomplish this completely unreasonable aim of 28% CO2 reduction below 2005 levels by 2025. Let's say that we were able to accomplish that. Let's not even talk about what that would actually do for global temperatures. Okay, so we will leave that out as well. And let's also leave out the fact that anytime there is a climate event that is warm or destructive, or anytime temperatures peak, or there is a hurricane, or there is an outbreak of tornadoes, right? Anytime there is a weather event, what is the first thing that the left does? They blame climate change. Right? And this isn't new. They've been doing this back since Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and leftists were blaming Bush for not signing the Kyoto Protocol or whatever it was at the time. And you see the same thing now, right? Hurricane Harvey, it stalled over Houston because of a high pressure system, which kind of kept it in place, prevented the hurricane from actually moving and dissipating. So it sat and dropped 50 inches of rain on Houston, and so Houston had these historic floods, and what is the result of what is the cause of the historic floods? Well, of course, it's climate change. So anytime there is a weather event, the left immediately blames global warming. But there's a weather event here in the Midwest and the Northeast. It's bitterly cold. Trump says something about it in jest, and the left melts down saying he doesn't understand the difference between weather and climate. Okay, we will leave that aside too. So all of these things we're going to leave aside, although I could do hours and hours on how disingenuous these people are. But let's look at the economic implications of these measures. What does it mean if we are going to reduce our CO2 emissions by 28% in 10 years? Well, again, let's start by acknowledging the fact that the United States depends on gas, natural gas, oil, coal. We depend on these things for our energy usage. And let me make sure I get the correct figure here. 87%. So carbon dioxide emitting fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas provide 87% of America's energy need over the past decade. So obviously this is the overwhelming way that we get our energy. And it's not so much that Americans desire to pollute the environment. I think that most people, unless you just throw garbage and waste and refuse and around your property, most people actually aspire to cleanliness in their own environment. And if that's true, then we can probably extrapolate that to believe that most people desire cleanliness in the environments around them. So nobody just stays at their house. Wherever you go, you would want a clean environment. You would want clean air. Nobody wants to breathe in dirty air. We get that, right? But there's also a trade-off associated with it. And right now, fossil fuel emitting gases and oils or whatever, this is the easiest, cheapest way for us to meet our energy needs currently. If there was a better way, I think Americans would be all for that. In other words, let's say that we now had the ability to harness and distribute solar power to every house, to every car. I mean, there is enough energy in the sun to power this world 10 times over. The problem is harnessing it and distributing it. But let's say we're able to do that. I don't think there's anybody who would say, no, we want to burn off oils. That's kind of our MO. We want to pollute the air. We want to pollute the environment. Nobody believes that, right? But as a means to obtain our goals right now, Americans and businesses turn to fossil fuels in order to meet our energy needs. So if we were to follow Obama's plan here, if we were to reduce, low-cost energy and replace. No, we can't just reduce energy use, right? Businesses are going to need the same amount of energy. In fact, they're going to need more. It's not like in 2025, all of a sudden, we're going to need less energy. Businesses are going to need more energy. People are going to require more energy. There are, so we're not just, you don't just reduce carbon dioxide emitting fuels, you replace it with high cost energy. So essentially what we're doing here is we are replacing low cost energy with high cost energy. Well, what does that mean? Here's where our economics lesson comes in. We have to go back to all the way to something that I did in episode 4, which was scarcity and factors of production. And the fact that factors of production are scarce and factors of production have cost. Now, I'm not going to completely go over this because it'd be a repetition, but it's good to do this lesson again because this is something that leftists just have no grasp of whatsoever. But in the production of goods and services, in the creation of jobs, manufacturing jobs, anything, energy is a major input, right? It is a factor of production. And there were 3 factors of production that we went over in that lesson. So in order for anything to be made, right? These three factors of production are required: land, labor, and capital. So let's just take a fake business, and I'm just going to use very, very simple numbers here to get my point across. But let's say there is a business and they they have $3 to allocate, right? And they allocate $1 towards land and natural resources, $1 towards labor, and $1 towards capital. All right, again, just for simplification purposes. If we go through with this plan, we replace low-cost energy with high-cost energy. Sorry about that. Now, the land part, the natural resource part, is going to require more money than we previously were allocating towards it. So we were previously giving $1 to each of these things. Now let's say for the land, for the natural resources, we have to allocate $1.50. Well, since we only have $3 to allocate towards our factors of production, that means we are going to have to now spend 75 cents on labor and 75 cents on capital. Right? Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if you are spending less on labor, that means you can hire fewer laborers. That means less jobs in an economy. So the point here is you can't just say we're going to reduce energy costs without giving the other side, without telling what the implications are going to be. This means less jobs across the economy. Not only that, but there's going to be less capital too, right? As businesses have to pay more for natural resources, they will have less money to invest in capital. What happens when you have less money to invest in capital? You can produce fewer products. What happens when you produce fewer products? Those products become more expensive. Now, this is highly regressive, right? When individual products, which require energy not only to get produced, but they require energy to get distributed, because trucks require gasoline. They require energy to sit on the shelves because retail stores have to turn on lights. When the price of all of that goes up, these products, right? These products that are now going to be more scarce, higher in price, they affect low-income earners way worse than they affect high-income earners. This is a negligible drop in the bucket for rich people. They don't care. But when the price of normal goods and services goes up and somebody is living on, $30,000 a year, maybe a family of four, that matters. This is a highly regressive tax on low-income people. It's extremely unfair. It's something that can be absorbed rather easily by rich people, but not so easily by poor people. Now, the other option for businesses, okay, let's say that they decide we are not going to cut back on labor or capital, right? We're going to still invest the same amount in labor and capital. And let's just say they do what every progressive would like them to do, which is take less profit, I suppose. So they again, before it was $1 to land, $1 to labor, $1 to capital, and now they owe $1.50 for land. So let's say that they keep with the dollar for labor, and they keep with the dollar for capital, and they just absorb the cost. Well, what happens then? Right? They pass those costs get passed on into the price of the final product. So again, the products here they're not it's not that they're scarce and therefore more expensive. They're just more expensive because the input costs are higher. They cost more to make, so those products will end up costing more. Again, this is highly regressive, and it hurts low-income earners way worse than it hurts high-income earners. Now, here is very, very simple supply and demand. At higher prices, people demand fewer products. That's what we call the law of demand. That's page 1, chapter 1 of any economics textbook. So at higher prices, if people demand less, well, that means that less of those things will be produced. And if less of those things are produced, that means we need fewer laborers to produce them, which means there will be fewer jobs in the economy. It doesn't matter which way you swing this. The outcome is the same every time. Fewer jobs, fewer products, more expensive products. This is and you extrapolate that across every industry over 10 years. This is an absolute disaster for our economy. Again, this is what is never talked about, right? Isn't it much easier to just say Trump hates science class? Yeah, that's neat and tidy. The Heritage Foundation, which, okay, if you know anything about the Heritage Foundation, you're probably going to dismiss this and go, it's just right-wing conservative crap. Granted, it's conservative, but this is a highly respected think tank. These are PhD level energy economists who have worked on this. And not only that, the models that they created in this study, they replicated the models from our own government. So it's not like they just, built these using their own projections or, using their own inputs. They actually modeled these after other models that were created by the government. I can't think of the name of the actual model, but I'll get with it. I'll find it. Oh, here it is. We use the Heritage Energy Model, a clone of the National Energy Modeling System 2015. So this it's cloned after what the government had already put out. So, all right, here is what they predict will happen over the course of 10 years if we went through with this Paris Climate Accord completely. There would be, first of all, over 200,000 fewer manufacturing jobs over the next 2 decades. 200,000 fewer manufacturing jobs over the next 2 decades, and most of those would hit immediately. We would see an overall average shortfall of nearly 400,000 jobs total. Again, this is just using the basic economics that I laid out for you. If you have to invest more money in one of the factors of production, and this one being natural resources, you will have less money for labor and capital. That's not complicated. An average manufacturing shortfall of over 200,000 jobs, a total income loss of more than $20,000 for a family of 4. That's not per year. That's what you could expect by 2035. So that's over the next 2 decades. So that's about $2,000 a year, and that comes in the way of not only higher energy costs, because again, remember, we have higher energy needs. Energy needs go up all the time, but we're replacing low-cost energy with high-cost energy. So a total income loss of more than $20,000 over this time for a family of 4, and an aggregate GDP loss of over $2.5 trillion. That was the trillions of dollars that Trump was referring to in his tweet when he said this was going to cost the United States trillions of dollars. That's in lost production over the next 2 decades. Increase in household electricity expenditures between 13% and 20%. So this is not good. And again, this is something that is never reported to you anywhere, not in the mainstream media. It's really frustrating. But you never see this in just typical arguments, or I guess debate. I won't call them arguments. I'll call them debates. Typical debates with leftists. I mean, so in that last episode, when I was saying that policy dialogue is dead, look, you can agree that the United States should stay in the Paris Climate Agreement, but you have to acknowledge all of these economic costs. And if you want to acknowledge all of these economic costs, if you want to say, yeah, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, but these will be the benefits, and you lay out the benefits, A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z, and that's why I think that overall, on net, it's going to be better to remain in the Paris Climate Accord than it is. That's a discussion or a debate that I would love to have, but nobody does that. Trump tweeted this. I guess he believes that global warming doesn't exist. That's what we have to deal with now. And it is ultimately frustrating because I enjoy policy discussions, I enjoy political discussions, and they simply don't happen anymore. All right. Where are we on time? 34 minutes. I guess it's about time to wrap it up. I guess in closing, what I would encourage everybody to do, first of all, if you want to continue this conversation, this is something that Spears and I really, really encourage people to do. If you are anti-Trump or getting out of the Paris Climate Accord, email us at margisonandspears@gmail.com. You can find Mr. Spears on Twitter at Justin Spears 4. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Margison. That's Margeson. And we would love to continue the conversation. But I honestly think that it is imperative that we get back to actual policy dialogue. And if we're going to discuss global warming, although that's just a wide, expansive thing. Well, it's not global warming anymore. It's climate change now. But if we're going to discuss that, it's got to be something better than Trump hates science class. That is just, it's so infantile. It doesn't get us anywhere in the national dialogue. All right, so I've laid out here why I think that the economic implications, not even why I think, it's just the other side. I just gave you the other side of why the United States might want to consider pulling out of the Paris Agreement, something that I wholeheartely endorse. I think that we never should have been in that. It's going to cost us a ton of money. Not to mention the fact, I forgot to mention this, we have to subsidize alternative energy methods for developing countries. That's just like straight handouts, payments for these developing countries, to put up wind farms or whatever else they're going to do. This is insanity. We have a country that's almost $21 trillion in debt, and we're signing these agreements that are just going to have us give handouts to banana republics so that they can put up a wind farm. I mean, come on. Let's think about this a little bit. The economic costs of this agreement in no way make up, the economic costs are far exceed what the benefits are. I should have said the benefits in no way make up for what the costs are. So, having said that, I'll go ahead and sign off now. Spears and I will be back on a joint episode that we've been talking about doing on Venezuela. We really want to get this done probably before we go back to school, which is next Monday. We're going to be talking about socialism versus capitalism, Venezuela, and why it's failing. I want to thank you for listening. And as we like to say here, your education's never complete until you've heard the other side.